simple.
Hey guys, welcome back. I know I've been gone for a while, been busy taking care of stuff, you know how life goes, but I am back, and as you could tell from the title of the video, I'm going to be talking about the wasted potential of Zack Snyder's DCEU. So, let's get right into it. So, if we're being honest here, the DCEU definitely had a rocky start in terms of the film that started everything off, which was Man of Steel. Personally, I'm a really big fan of Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman and Zack Snyder's cut of Justice League, but I do definitely understand a lot of the criticisms people aim towards it, and how a lot of it is pretty valid. Some of it can be unnecessary hate towards the director. I'm not saying he's a perfect director. Personally, he's one of my favorites. Again, all this is more of a personal thing, not really like, oh, what I'm saying is valid, so you have to listen to me kind of crap. More of I just want to give my 2 cents and what I liked about it, and how Zack definitely had some issues and ideas that were not the greatest. And I do want to admit, one of the driving forces, it's kind of one of the main ones for me making this video, is the announcement that Henry Cavill wouldn't be reprising his role as Superman for the future DC slate of films. In one hand, I get it. You know, James Gunn is doing a full-on reboot. He wants to do his own version and own take on the character, which is completely fair and understandable. In the other hand, though, it feels a lot heavier, but the truth is, they've wasted Henry Cavill as Superman from the very beginning. He didn't get a lot of screen time in Batman vs. Superman. He was more or less not even in Justice League. As much as I enjoyed the sequences with him in it, it wasn't enough Superman, I think. And from what I hear, Zack intended to have him go through this arc to eventually become the Superman that everybody knows from the comics, which is, you know, it's a different idea, and I find it interesting, and it's a cool concept to sort of apply to Superman, but there is a fair argument to say that you don't need to do that kind of character development to Superman, which is, again, it's fair and it's pretty valid. Superman's pretty simple, cut and dry, but you could also make him very complex with situations that he has to deal with, similar to what they do in the comics. Plus, you had Henry Cavill, who is a fantastic actor and definitely deserved a lot more credit than he got when it came to playing Superman, and deserved so much more than what he was given. I think with the right material, Henry Cavill honestly could have been the most comic book accurate Superman we could have seen on the big screen. And just as a fan of not just DC, but Henry Cavill's work, it's just like Hollywood keeps fucking with him for almost no reason at all. It's almost as if he has like a secret cult or something, or he's evil secretly and they know something we don't, but I just don't see it. All I see when I look at him is Superman. He's picture perfect for the part. He looks it physically. You can see small bits of it within his performance in Man of Steel that Superman is in there. And he could have done great stuff. But at the end of the day, James Gunn is a great writer. He makes good stuff. I was pretty pissed off when I first heard the news, but with some time to simmer down about it, it's understandable. It's just, again, one of the things that was wasted about Zack Snyder's DCEU. However, it's not just Warner Brothers' fault that Henry Cavill was wasted, but to be honest, it was also Zack Snyder's fault. He had a whole movie to develop Superman and make him the comic accurate Superman we know, but he chose not to because he wanted to make it a multiple movie arc, which I can understand where he's coming from in terms of trying something different, but it just didn't really mesh well for Superman specifically. So to get a little further with my point about Zack Snyder himself, he said himself he had a lot of different ideas. He also acknowledges not everything was great about it, but he also felt like there were some great ideas in there, and I definitely agree. Especially when all the concept art and rough drafts of stuff he had outlined for the future of the DCEU. And he definitely has some really great ideas, but he also had some ideas that were not so great. And we'll get more into that after I play the audio clip.
Journal that I pitched when I was pitching BVS, after we did Man of Steel, and I was in the room with all the big wigs, and we were talking about how we'd go forward. And it had the whole thing, all the way, through Dark Side Invasion, the whole thing. And I And I remember I was looking at it, I was like, wow, like this is like 2014 or whatever. So it's like it's a long, maybe it was 2013 that I pitched. I forget. I have to look at the date, but so it's a long time in the making as far as what we had in mind. I thought, because what I thought was like anything, we would do this run of these movies and then we would get to the end and then they'd have to reboot the whole thing again and start over. Just like kind of the cycle that is natural for DC. And also, I think it's like, then the people have had enough. We've had our run. It's like we wrote a comic book. We took a run and we did some crazy stuff and stuff and so a lot of the ideas were great. Some weren't that great, but we believed in it enough to like take it to its final conclusion.
So there's definitely quite a bit to unpack in that statement alone. I know I'm a little behind in terms of addressing Zack Snyder's future plans. I know a lot of YouTubers have already talked about it, so I won't go too much into detail, but I'll kind of just point out the things I found interesting. For example, I found it very interesting that everything with Darkseid was going to be built up. It wasn't going to be Darkseid straight away in the sequel from what it sort of seemed like, but more of he was going to be this Thanos level villain in a way. I also think the concept of the nightmare timeline that was introduced in Batman vs. Superman was also something that was really cool and unique, and we hadn't really seen anything like that with comic book media at the time. And from looking at the concept art, they had a lot of cool stuff, along with the Legion of Doom was going to be a factor in it. Aquaman uniting the Seven Seas with Mera, or the Seven Kingdoms within the ocean, was going to be also part of Aquaman's arc. Wonder Woman would eventually return to Themyscira to reunite with her mother and the rest of the Amazons. Cyborg was more or less going to find out that he was a digital god and having access to a lot of things, which Zack does touch upon within the Snyder Cut because Cyborg is a pretty big factor for that movie. He was also going to be helping out Barry Allen, aka The Flash, reopen his father's case to help him not be in prison anymore. I also want to address Ezra Miller briefly.
They got your ass on camera.
Niggas ain't got me on no fucking camera.
This is the clearest video I've ever seen. This is the most HD shit ever. This is 4K. How did they get you in 4K?
I tried to give his performance as Flash a pass because I was really excited about the Snyder Cut when it finally came out. But after some time to think on it, I did not enjoy him as the Flash. I think he was the weakest link out of everybody who was casted in the Justice League. Hell, even Jason Momoa, who didn't feel like a proper fit for Aquaman, did a lot better than Ezra Miller did. And Ben Affleck and Gal Gadot proved a lot of naysayers wrong once the movie came out. A good chunk of people did enjoy the performances as the characters, and they feel very fitting for them. Ray Fisher was also a great addition to the DCEU as Cyborg. I really felt his performance, and I definitely was very happy with all the character development that he was given in the Snyder Cut that was taken away in the first theatrical release. So let's talk more about the not-so-great ideas within the DCEU, which is also within the outline concept art that Zack had in that journal he mentions in the interview. For example, one of the weirdest and most oddball and kind of nonsensical ideas Zack had was that Lois Lane and Batman were going to have a secret romance while Superman was dead or still alive. I'm not exactly sure. It's a little confusing. And Lois is pregnant with Batman's kid, and then Batman sacrifices himself, and then Superman and Lois Lane raise Batman's son. Not a great idea. I am not a fan of that. Especially because it really seemed like Zack Snyder was setting up a romance between Bruce Wayne and Diana Prince, getting that Wonder Bat romance from Justice League the Animated Series. And another obvious problem Zack's DCEU had was Batman breaking his no-killing rule. I definitely get where fans are coming from. At the time, it didn't really bother me, but I do really understand where they're coming from. Another big problem that I had with Zack's DCEU was the fact that the dead Robin was Dick Grayson and not Jason Todd. Jason Todd is my favorite Robin, so I was really not cool with that idea. I was just like,
No. Wait. Hey. Wait.
that just doesn't work. Dick Grayson doesn't have to, like, I can see how his death is what drove Batman to break his no killing rule, because Dick Grayson was basically his son. It just feels wrong. A lot of Zach's bad ideas were bad. I have to be honest here.
What you listening to, son?
I don't think you like it.
Well, why not? I like this new generation of music.
Hello?
Mother of God, it's all toilet sounds.
Anyway, let's get back to the good ideas that Zack Snyder had. For example, the Unity was going to be successful. Steppenwolf would have succeeded. The world would have been burnt to a crisp, similarly to how Apocalypse's environment is. And Darkseid would have won, and he would have taken over the planet. I also feel like maybe the nightmare vision Cyborg was having when they were resurrecting Superman were possible outcomes. One is where the Unity succeeds and the world is annihilated. Then there's one where Darkseid just straight up shows up, because at the end of Justice League, he does say that he wants Desaad to prepare the Armadas because they're going to invade the planet. And with these visions, you see that the Amazonians are having a funeral for Wonder Woman, so maybe he killed her. And in the visions, we also see that he straight up murders Aquaman with his own trident in Atlantis when he's most likely king already, uses the Omega Beams, which is really dope to see in live action. And the other concept that I thought was really cool and interesting was that Darkseid was actually going to use the anti-life equation that he acquires from Lex Luthor, because Riddler solved it. A little weird, but whatever. And he uses it to mind control Superman. And I thought that was really cool, because then you see Superman is sort of in the red and blue suit, kind of like how in the animated series, when Darkseid had mind control Superman the same way, he had Superman carry a flag with the House of L on it to sort of show the Earth, like, look, I've taken your champion and I made him mine. So I feel like that's kind of where they were going with Darkseid taking over Superman's mind, and that would have been really cool to see in live action. And there's one last thing I want to bring up from the audio clip I played from the Zack Snyder interview. And it's when he said that he looked at his run of movies as if it was a comic book run. They did some crazy stuff. They had some great ideas. They had some not so great ideas. And I think if Warner Brothers had just let him finish his set of movies, however many he was going to make, because there's no real certainty how many he had planned. He clearly had a plan for multiple. But I've heard things that came out saying he only had 5 movies planned. He also had some other stuff planned in between. Like, there is no real concrete definitive answer for how many movies Zack had planned for his universe, but he didn't want to do too many. And I especially liked how in the interview he says that, eventually people would get tired of it and they would have had their run. And I thought that was really cool, because it's sort of like DC is pretty infamous for reboots anyway. Look at all the Batman movies we had, all the Superman movies we've had. I mean, we were going to get a Justice League movie from George Miller. So there's a lot of stuff DC's pretty infamous for doing when it comes to reboots and stuff. And it would have made a lot of sense. And I feel like Zack's words hold really true today, because if you look at the MCU, a lot of people are getting fatigued from it, because they're more or less doing the same thing with different characters. They all more or less feel the same. There are those characters who do feel very different from other characters within the MCU, but a lot of it is more or less the same. There's that MCU formula that they have that has really worked well for them, and you can't really blame them that, they're still using it. But it really adds to Zack's point that, eventually people are going to get tired of seeing the same thing over and over and over again. So it's better to just end on a high note than to just drag it out until you've milked it for all it's worth. So with all that being said, guys, I'm going to wrap up this video because, to be honest, I don't have too much more to say about it. I'm just really bummed out that Zack didn't get to complete his entire universe. I'm happy that we got the Snyder Cut. And to be honest, I feel like that was all we were going to get down the line, which is a real bummer, but it's kind of true. And, the whole Henry Cavill being fired, or, well, not fired, but let go kind of thing, it's understandable because it's Hollywood, but nonetheless, it still sucks because he was a great actor and he didn't even get to reach his fullest potential as this character, who, again, he clearly has a lot of love and passion for. But, it is what it is at the end of the day. I'm not too sure when I'll have my next video up. I just wanted to do this video because, I'm very passionate about Zack Snyder's movies. I'm a big fan of his. I'm a big fan of the DCEU, despite all its problems, because, we all know it has a lot. But if you want to keep hearing my voice, I am actually on a podcast with two of my really good friends, Matt and Rico. It is called the AMP Podcast. AMP stands for Another Movie Podcast. And, you know, implied in the title, we talk about movies. We break them down, we give our analysis, what we liked about the movies, what we didn't like about them. We usually do 2 movies per episode. We have 9 episodes out on the channel right now. We have the 10th episode dropping soon, which is going to be a trilogy episode. So whenever you find the time, feel free to give it a listen. And if you watched the video, thank you so much again. I do appreciate it. And I will see you in the next video. Whenever that is. Bye.
You will give the people of Earth an ideal to strive towards. They will race behind you. They will stumble. They will fall. But in time, they will join you in the sun count. In time,